So I'll face into the sun so you guys don't have to. All right, so welcome everybody, and thanks again. And Marjan, congratulations on KLM's 105th birthday. That means there's a new Delft house in World Business Class, yes?
Yeah,
to add to my collection.
House,
yes?
3 canals in the center of Amsterdam.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you know, as we start this conversation this morning, I'd like to get a sense from you all about some of the things that we have heard this morning. I mean, we're talking about a variety of topics: geopolitics, adapting Gen AI, being more efficient, dealing with the supply chain issues. So let's just start with this. The state of play is certainly very uneven around the world. Some parts of the world are doing better than others. But as we look at this, as you are trying to manage your organizations, as you're trying to lead, where do you see the biggest pain point right now and the biggest opportunity? Theo, I'm going to start with you. You represent, as CEO of Star Alliance, the largest airline alliance. And obviously you're not an airline, but you have 24 airline members. What are the challenges that you and your members are trying to address right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point you made is spot on. We are not an airline, so I think that's an important distinction to make. However, what we are is an organization that comes together to be able to deliver unique value that the member carriers cannot otherwise do on their own. Excuse me. And when you look at the landscape and where we're at, customer experience is right at the core of that. The airlines themselves, I look at our member carriers, invest an enormous amount of money in technology, in innovation. So we don't want to be duplicating those kinds of efforts, but rather it's a little bit like an airline going beyond their own capabilities, and that's where the interline piece comes into play. And one of the mottos that we've come up as our core focus with the customer experience is about making the interline experience as online as possible. How do we do that? We leverage technology to be able to deliver upon that. And you're already seeing some really powerful examples of that. One of them being tracking bags. And so when you've got 2 or 3 airlines on the one itinerary, utilizing technology to have the capability for a customer to be able to track their bag across multiple sectors with multiple carriers is a very, very powerful customer experience focus to be introduced into the marketplace. And the key point of this is when you look at technology, especially when the smartphone technology started to come out, it was nice to haves, then it became expectations. The customers now demand these changes. They want control of their own destiny. They want to make sure that the experience across the entire journey, and we know there's so many pain points that we're leveraging technology to address those issues.
Right. And Marjan, you mentioned this as part of your comments, that digitalization is critical at KLM. David, you have built a new airline, technology at the core of Breeze. You know, where do you guys see the opportunities there? Are you know, do you think that there's a lot more to do
Probably we have a different starting point with
yes.
105 years as an old company. So we really need to overcome some legacy systems and build digitization and automation around it. So it's a big challenge as well for us. And at the same time, customers expect it. And we use, for example, the AI and reduced 60% of our waste on board of catering at the same time, which is really needed with weight reduction, waste reduction, and at the end offer the customer what they want.
Yeah, you know, little known fact that I kind of invented e-ticket travel.
I was going to say, you started Navitaire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Started Navitaire with my partner David Evans, and you know, we created a relational database. When I was at Southwest Airlines, after I sold my first airline, they wouldn't take a credit card number over the phone, and you had to go to the airport to buy your ticket. So that's how much times have changed. So I've kind of been at the forefront. We created the first kiosk check-in at Morris Air that we took to Southwest Airlines. You know, I think as we move forward, just using AI to know your customers better, to be able to digitize everything, to be able to target them, to reach out to them, to create a super app that has everything in there. I mean, much like the flyer presentation, but those are things that we're doing today. And there's just so much capability of serving up what the customer really wants as opposed to just blasting emails to everybody. And really knowing them and looking at their travel patterns and just offering up so many more things. It drives me crazy. Bookings is based here in Amsterdam, and if you add up, I think Bookings, last time I looked, their market cap was $150 billion, and that's more than all the airlines in the United States put together times 2. And I don't know a single soul that when they book, they would never go to Bookings and book a hotel before they went and booked an airline ticket. So you book your airline ticket, then you go to Bookings. Well, why can't the airlines get a little bit of that sugar? It's crazy that they make all the money and we have to deal with talking about SAF all day long. They don't have to deal with that crap. So, we need a piece of that. So I think integrating more of that into our offering is what we're trying to figure out.
Well, you're sitting next to the guy who is responsible for the airlines transitioning into retailing. IATA and NDC and all of that is something that we've been working on for 10 or more years, and it's starting to pay off. I mean, we are starting to see offers being created. We are starting to see personalization, bundles being created and so on. So we are seeing some progress there. Whether an airline wants to sell that third-party product versus just try to manage the stuff it has to offer on its own is a commercial question, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's it comes down to the individual airline, and I mean, obviously these are they deal with multiple airlines, and I think it's just you just try to be the best you can on your own and be as innovative as you possibly can to create something different. People, we don't have a 70 NPS score, because we do business the same way of other people. We have to look at it completely different. Willie?
Yeah, the industry is moving. There will be people within the industry that will move much faster, and I think that's a positive. What we try to do at IATA is ensure that everybody can move in the same direction where it makes sense to do so. So we only do it when the industry wants to move in that direction, and then we try to facilitate it rather than, so we've 330 airline members. Rather than 330 people trying to approach it in their own way, we try and say, well, let's see, can we do this as a collective? And then people can decide what it is they want to do within that. So, we are seeing within the offer and order space, some airlines moving much, much faster than others, as you would expect.
Yeah.
Because the reward for some will be significantly greater, exactly as David says. There are a lot of airlines who are already generating significant revenue streams through selling hotels, car hire, facilitated by technology elsewhere as well. So it is happening, and I agree with David. When I look at Booking.com, I don't think they own any assets. Maybe the fantastic building that they have here in Amsterdam. So this is an industry that has facilitated many others in the wider value chain. To generate significant sums of money. We do all the hard work, and I've got to be honest, it is frustrating for us to see net margins of 3% this year. The best we've ever achieved at an industry level was 5%. So we work very hard and we face all of the challenges, and yet there are lots of people around us who have done exceptionally well. So I think rebalancing that is something that we as an industry really have to look at doing.
But we've been talking about that for a long time.
Yeah, and we'll continue to talk about it, and that's why I say, going back to SAF, the idea that an organization like Booking.com is committed to net zero in 2050 is meaningless, because what they're expecting is the airlines will pay for it, and that's just not going to work. Because airlines can't afford to pay for it. Going back to what I said, an industry that's generating 30 billion net profit cannot afford to make the investments to fund the transition to net zero. So if these people want to be part of the future of the wider aviation industry, they're going to have to play their part, and they're going to have to pay to play their part in a way that maybe they haven't done in the past.
So I mean, what does this mean? Does it mean booking is going to have to pay an environmental?
No, but I think the model that there are people who can just extract value from our industry and expect the industry to continue to function isn't going to work. So there has to be a rethink. If we're in this together, there's going to have to be a rethink as to how this industry, the wider industry, works. I represent the airline industry. The airline industry is not the same as the wider aviation. Airports, let's take these bastards, they're just creaming it off the back of all the hard work that we do. So we're in a completely different industry, and sometimes I think governments and regulators look at us as if we're the same. We're not the same. We're very different, and the challenges we face are very different to the challenges that airports face. And there's got to be greater recognition at a government and at a regulator level that is the case.
Yeah, Theo.
Just to touch on a couple of points, one that David made as well when we were talking about NPS and customer experience and where the pain points are in travel. Irrespective of people's points of view, the data shows us the very same thing. The NPS demonstrates what the big pain points are. The examples are baggage, lost bags, irregular operations. These are very real pain points in the industry. And different airlines and different constituencies will move at different speeds, but it doesn't change the issue. And so having the right focus and prioritization on addressing these very real customer experience issues and leveraging digitalization to deliver upon what customers demand. And I think the key point I would emphasize quite passionately, and that is people want control of their own destiny, and technology has trained them that way, as it should. And so there is an opportunity for us to leverage it. But to Willie's point as well, there are other companies here that are extracting disproportionate value through that. And these are conversations that need to be confronted and had, because the customer's expectations or demands aren't going to change. If anything, they'll continue getting stronger and stronger.
But at Star, you have made some investments with some technology solutions to help your members with baggage and some other things, right?
Yeah, so we've rolled out solutions that enable customers to track their bags across multiple partner carriers on itineraries. We've rolled out technology that allows customers to be able to select their own seats on multiple carriage. The next step now is to provide the opportunity to do paid seats, which then becomes not just a customer experience enhancement, but also an ancillary opportunity for airlines on an interline basis. And that's where our sweet spot is, and our core focus as an organisation is all about that. But these are some of the initial examples. But when you look at the journey, we look at it from a booking perspective, then onto the airport experience, then connectivity, and then to loyalty. You've got that pathway. I think we can all agree there are pain points across that journey, and it requires an enormous amount of investment. It's not easy. There is a lot of complexity associated to it, but I would bring the conversation back to it's a demand of the customers, and it's the ones that adapt to that will succeed into the future.
Okay. One pain point that airlines have to deal with is air traffic management. Now, Theo, again, Star Alliance, you're not an airline, your members have to deal with this. But we have heard that there is a huge problem here in Europe. David, we know we have a problem in the US. How do we, again, work with the organizations to help them understand the need to fund the hiring of the air traffic controllers, to invest in the hardware and software necessary for the efficient solutions, the other activities that'll be modernization, and let's take it a step further, even reach out to kids when they are, I don't know how old they would need to be, but to let them understand, hey, there's a career as an air traffic controller that if you want to be part of aviation but in a different way, you have that option. What do we need to do? Because it's a real problem, and it goes to the environmental issue that we're trying to address.
We discussed this, I'm not sure if I'm on.
Yes,
yeah, we discussed this topic already for decades.
Right.
decades. And I think it's really annoying that there are small steps made within Europe, and we don't see a single European sky anywhere soon. And the issue of all the delays, the issue of shortages in labor, it's really possible to solve it with automation, with digital airspaces, with working together, and keeping your own authority, which is needed by the different countries. But there's so much resistance against single European sky, and it is still the 10% CO2 reduction we need. It's quite easy to achieve. And it will reduce delays by countries working together within the EU, and that's only the EU. I understand in the US it's the same thing. But we need to encourage the European government and the European countries to show that we will have results in the near future, because this is not workable.
Right. What's frustrating to me as the analyst, and I know it's more frustrating to you as the executives at the airlines, and Willie for you, and Theo for you, with your members, the bureaucrats who are not giving the money are also complaining about their flights being delayed, whether it's waiting to take off or land or whatever. Same in the US. Why doesn't the left hand and the right hand work better together? What's the disconnect? What do we need to do to make the argument clearer and more compelling?
Well, it's ironic that you just heard we could cut our CO2 emissions by 10%.
Yeah,
so the same people that are kind of mandating SAF and all this other stuff are the same ones that are stopping. So it obviously, they're not really serious, right? If they were serious, we could get into nuclear power plants if we wanted to, but the dichotomy there as well. But it's technology could handle all of this stuff as so much safer than what we have today. The fact that when you go into New York Tricon and see how they handle flights manually, and we've had some close calls in the United States. Hopefully it doesn't take a tragedy or something like that to get us to move to better technology. But the technology exists; it's all there. It's just the willpower to do it. And I can't take any of this SAF stuff seriously if they can't even deal with that issue. Then it's kind of like, you'll never get there if you can't even solve this problem first.
But David, when Marjan and David, again, you're running the airlines. When you talk to the leaders, why, are they saying one thing to you and doing another, or are they just ignoring it?
We had an opportunity in the United States to privatize air traffic control a few years back, and one airline killed it because they weren't having the same air traffic control delays as the other airlines. And they just, so it was blatant self-interest that killed it, and it was an opportunity to do that. And I think starting with privatization of a system would be a really good first step.
Willie?
Well, I don't disagree with David, but just to point out, we have a privatized air traffic control system in the UK. It's not that good. Privatization might be part of the solution. But if you look at the challenges Gatwick Airport has faced, where it's a private provider of the air traffic control at Gatwick, they haven't been functioning. And part of the problem here is, again, these are typically monopoly suppliers. So although it's privatized, it's a monopoly. So it's a private monopoly which is focused on making a lot of money and doesn't do a very good job. So we need better regulation. But the frustration here, Europe, I think, is this debate highlights the siloed approach of the Commission. So you've got part of the Commission focused on the environment, pushing very hard to improve environmental performance. Then you've got a part of the Commission focused on transport, who are saying, well, I'd love to have the single European sky, but the decision has been taken at the individual government level. So Europe, as I said, I think the EU is a good thing, but I think the way it functions actually seriously needs change. It needs to be more joined up. I think the recent Draghi report, which talked about the competitiveness of Europe globally, I think is a wake-up call. So, what we have in Europe is we have a fragmented system that could change overnight because the technology is already there. Airlines have invested in technology. That's the frustrating thing for us. The single European sky could come about without zero investment. And we don't need more air traffic controllers. We need the air traffic controllers that we have functioning in a more efficient manner. So rather than having fragmented airspace, that they're working collectively. So, there are fewer ATC controllers in the US than there are in Europe. And yet the US handles more flights than Europe does. Now, the US problem is the funding of the FAA and getting recruitment of air traffic controllers. So there are different problems, but the solution is the same. We need better coordination. We need a clearer focus on the benefit of having a more efficient ATC environment, which is massive. The reduction in delays, and they're getting worse in Europe rather than better, the reduction in fuel burn, the reduction in CO2, all of these are significant positives. And the investment is practically zero. You get very few business cases where you can see all of these benefits at absolutely limited, if no cost. And it's a scandal. I think Europe is a scandal. Maybe David's right to be somewhat skeptical about SAF when you see behaviors like this. But it is a scandal that we're forcing people to fly in an inefficient manner because the governments that are committed to net zero can't be bothered to address the issue.
Right. And Willie, that's actually a good jumping off point to the next topic I'd like to discuss, which is, because you've mentioned technology, airlines have been investing in technology. Elements of artificial intelligence allow airlines to do more efficient flight planning, to, as you said, reduce catering waste, to do a lot of different things, improve the customer experience. So I'm just curious, there's so many different areas. Where do you think the contributions of technology can be greatest to improving the business? Is it on the operational side? Is it on the traveler side? Is it going to be a mix? Is it with employees?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, but I think it's also in the operational side. So if you look at the debate we had before regarding the geopolitical situation, about the supply chain, about the cost levels, we need the technology, for example, in predictive maintenance, to at least know exactly up front what do we need and have the processes in place to handle the maintenance. So that's a combination. We discussed a lot about customers and customers facing, but we need technology in operation as well, facing shortages in labor market, facing issues we have in the world.
What kind of benefits does an airline like KLM get from predictive maintenance, using the predictive maintenance?
Of course, less cancellations at the end, which is a benefit for our customers.
But I mean, do you get airplanes in and out of the hangar, for for maintenance checks faster?
Yes. You get them out, but you have the information which you need to be more reliable and have the right processes in place.
Sorry.
No.
In simplest terms, if you have a part that is failing at a certain interval, you just replace it before it fails.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you have a more reliable, dispatch reliability goes up, and you don't have to have parts all over the world because you know that part's going to fail, and so you take it out. So you use the AI to, because there are 10,000 parts on an airplane. No spreadsheet can do that, but AI, if you input it all in blockchain, you can figure it all out, and you can avoid a lot of cancellations.
Yeah, Theo, you've been doing a lot with tech at Star.
Look, with AI, we're still at the early stages of this technology, and it's all moving very, very quickly. But there are, I think, to Marjan's point, operationally is equally beneficial here as it would be from a commercial customer experience perspective. If you think about irregular operations and what AI, with all the wealth of information, feeding it in to be able to preempt and assist carriers with reaccommodating when things don't go right. And so we're looking at that really, really closely. But something as simple as going onto a website And rather than having a Q&A, having the ability for the customer to ask questions and get answers on very straightforward types of questions. And so I think you'll find that this is going to be very, very powerful, and it will move very, very quickly. And as I said, we're looking at it really, really closely. And I expect and suspect as we move into the future, we're going to be leveraging that type of technology pretty quickly.
Okay. You know, one emerging area of tech is identity management. And Willie, IATA has been at the forefront. You've got one ID, you know, so that it makes cross-border travel more seamless, less stressful, more efficient. Where do things stand? And Marjan and you know, David, I know you're not really an international carrier, but you've run international airlines. What benefits do you see to this?
I think it's certainly improving, and I think this was brought home significantly during the period of the pandemic again, when additional requirements were imposed on travel, and we had to revert to paper-based systems. You know, we had to get people going to check-in desks that hadn't seen a check-in desk in years because they were using online. So if ever we needed to convince people that digital solutions to not just enhance the customer experience, but to enhance the efficiency of airlines, airports, and governments, it's a fantastic win-win. And we are seeing some progress on it. Like everything, trying to get a global standard is always a challenge, but more and more people are recognizing you know, the advantage of having a single standard. You know, we have a global standard for passports. So having a global digital standard shouldn't be that difficult to achieve, and it will make a huge difference.
Is this an area where airlines and airports are coming together?
Yeah, I think there's definitely scope. Like, you know, I was critical of airports earlier, and I always will be. You know, but there's about 80% of our challenges are common, and then the 20% are financial, where we're just violently opposed. So, you know, this is an area where there is common ground, and it'll make it work. If you think of airports prior to the pandemic, airports were not designed for every passenger to go to a check-in desk. You know, they're just not designed that way. And if today every passenger had to go to a check-in desk, there would be chaos at the airports. So, you know, we need digital solutions to ensure that the infrastructure that we have in place today will be efficient when we see, you know, a doubling of passenger numbers, that the infrastructure that's in place today will be able to continue to function. So this is a must-do. It's not a nice-to-do anymore. It's an absolute must-do. And as I said, that was brought home, I think, to everybody during the pandemic, when we had very few people traveling, but a lot of pressure at airports because of the way we had to, you know, check that the people who were traveling had the right authority to travel.
Marjan, you know, KLM has done a lot of investment in the airport customer experience, using tech to empower your customers to serve themselves. Where do you see the opportunity to improve on that?
Well, a lot of opportunities still. We still have the check-in desk at the airport, and we still face capacity constraints. So we are not done yet, not at all. And you still face some operational issues. If you look at baggage handling and the facilities at Schiphol. I know Peter van Oort announced big investments in Schiphol Airport the next coming years to upgrade this. But you need for your customers, and you need a seamless process for your customers. So there are a lot of new opportunities to invest in.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, David.
when we privatized TAP, we increased the service to the United States by 10 times. And the people would land in Portugal, beautiful country, for the first time, and they'd wait in line for 2 hours to get through customs. And
Same at Schiphol, by the way.
so I went to the government and I said, look, these people are paying, if you just give me 10 people more, we can make 5,000 people's lives better. Yeah, it's just so little things make such a huge difference. But governments have to understand, you know, they're spending tens of millions on tourism, and they can't get enough people at the border to be able to. And then the crazy thing that Europe did was that when you left the country, When you leave the United States, they don't care. Just go. Nobody has to check you. Goodbye. But when you leave Europe, when you left Portugal, you had to go wait in line, and you'd miss your flight going home because they would hold you prisoner in the country. Just kind of ludicrous stuff like that that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right, but there is growing use of e-gates. There is, that is.
It's better.
It's getting better.
But
You know, yes.
so I agree, but you need every step to be better, because if one step is not good enough, that's the one who will annoy you.
Right.
Are we going to let Henry off? Are we going to let Willie off the hook on all the SAF comments that he made earlier? I mean, look at. let me ask a question. We, as an industry, we create 2.5% of the CO2, right? 2.5%.
Right.
Today.
Transportation is 14%. I have a Tesla, and it makes sense for me to have a Tesla because it's cheaper than buying gas. That doesn't work with airplanes.
No, look.
So the question is,
agriculture produces far more emissions.
if he's
Cows
talk-
produce
exactly, if he's talking about $171 billion, what if we took 30 billion of that 171 and helped transportation go from 14% down to 10%, where we had an offset that was greater than what we were consuming? Doesn't that make a lot more sense than trying to force? Because what Willie didn't say, let me
the
just...
issue David's forgetting about is that is happening with other industries, and that's why, it's 2.5% today. The question is, what will it be in 2050? It won't be 2.5%.
But if we offset it 100%, it doesn't matter.
No, but the
And you
challenge...
didn't even talk about the food supply. What's going to happen?
But the challenge, David, is...
How are you going to feed all these people when you're blowing it all through the tailpipes of an airplane?
An airline like yours, if you want to stand up and say, I am not going to do anything to address my environmental...
I am. I got the most fuel-efficient engines.
I wish you well.
I've got the most fuel-efficient engines.
But everybody has the most fuel-efficient engines because we all have the same engines as you have. So therefore, the one that sets out and says, I'm the greenest out there. You're not. You're going to be, as we say, you're going to be the cream of the...
There's a way to offset it.
The cream of the crop, not the cream of the crop.
Let me just tell you one thing.
So
Willie,
you have no choice. You have no choice but to recognize.
Of these people here won't have a job if
No, they will have a job.
No, they won't.
It'll be a
Because
different economy.
You're
They will have a
crush the
job.
industry.
No,
you're going to absolutely crush the industry.
No, and it's not me. I'm not the only one. If you believe that I'm the only one that does that, I represent the industry. I don't represent you because
I'm not a member.
You're not part of IATA. But actually, I defend you, as I'm defending the industry. And I recognize that there are people within the industry that don't care about the environment and aren't prepared to do anything about it. And fair play to you. I wish you well.
It has nothing to do with caring about the industry. It's being most
No, I didn't say you didn't care about the industry.
No, I'm just saying it's being economical and doing it smart instead of just ramming something through that makes zero sense.
But the smart answer that you're coming up with is, we'll continue to burn fossil fuel to the last day. And that's not going to work. That's certainly not going to work in parts of the world where they recognize that airlines will not be allowed to do that. And what you'll get, not everywhere, but what you'll get, and you'll certainly see it in Europe, is, okay, we're now going to focus on demand suppression. We're going to stop people flying. We're going to start dealing with the gross emissions rather than the net emissions. And then you won't have an industry. No. And here's the measure. I started in this industry in 1979. Seat factors in 1979 at a global level were less than 60%. In the 80s, average seat factors for the industry in that 10-year period, 64%. In the 90s, 67%. In the noughties, 74%. And so far this decade, we're, if I ignore the disruption as a result of COVID, we're at 82%. So the industry has become more efficient because we're filling more of our seats. So we're not standing still, we're working harder, and therefore our fuel efficiency has improved significantly. But what will happen if we don't face up to playing our part in the transition to net zero is you will see pressure put on airlines in certain parts of the world, not everywhere, where taxes, government will say, this is great, I'm going to tax this industry. Yeah. Taxing won't have an environmental benefit, because instead of reducing the number of flights, it will reduce the number of people on those flights, and we'll start slipping back from 82% seat factors to 74% seat factors to 64% seat factors. The industry will still be there. It'll just be so much more inefficient, and it will be the preserve of the wealthy people who will be able to
Right,
travel.
it's going backwards to like it was in the
It would be
1950s.
such a retrograde step. So I fundamentally believe, as an industry, we have to recognize that there is a global movement to address environmental performance, and we have to play our part in that. And it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, it's impossible, really. From what you're describing at 171 billion, we have to think, 174 billion. It just, there's a better way. If we took 30 billion of that and said, we're not doing our part. No, we're paying 30 billion and we're electrifying,
but we're doing that
100,000 or 200,000 or a million trucks a year.
Yeah.
That we are doing our part. We're just doing it in a smarter, more efficient way.
No, but we're doing that already. So Corsia is exactly that. Corsia is part of the solution as well, which in the interim before we have SAF, will be using our money to provide decarbonisation opportunities to other industries. That's how Corsia works. So we're doing that as well. The problem is there's a limit to how much we can do that.
Well, they're 14%, we're 2.5%. There's a long way to go from the other side. We can take away double what we're producing with a heck of a lot less money than you're talking about.
Well, I think if you look at it globally, it's not going to work that way because the
It's just
opportunity,
math.
but the opportunity to electrification is not going to work everywhere in the world in the same way as rail doesn't work everywhere in the world.
Right.
And if we look at how this industry is going to develop, so David operates in the U.S. domestic market. In 2000, U.S. domestic RPKs. So the shape of that was 26.2% of global aviation. In 2023, it was 15.4%. Growth rate in the US domestic market, I'm just talking about domestic, 1.8% compound. China, 2.4% in 2000, 11.2% in 2023. Growth rate of 11.4% compound. India is growing their domestic market, 11.4% compound. Brazil, your old home, 7.2%. Japan, 0.8%. So what you're seeing is, the shape of the industry is changing. And, the US domestic market, in terms of its contribution to global aviation, is changing.
Smaller.
But the growth is going to come in other parts of the world where many of the options that you talk about just won't be possible. And the only global solution we have, and I talk about the industry at a global level. The only global solution we have is through sustainable aviation fuel, and that's why we believe it is the most significant part of the transition.
But you never talked about food supply interruption in all of your. How many
acres
and how much water will have to be produced to get 171
but sustainable,
billion worth
for it to be
sustainable
truly
fuel?
sustainable, it cannot compete with food and land.
Well, it will. Of course, it will.
No, but then it won't be sustainable. So for the fuel to be sustainable, the sustainability criteria says it cannot compete with food production or land use. That is the criteria.
Yes.
You should read some of the stuff there.
Well, you heard the you heard the Ethiopian CEO at your conference get up and say, "We can't even feed our own people," and Willie's talking about that we have to be sustainable. We're just trying to feed our own.
But he can create jobs.
Yes.
By developing sustainable aviation fuel through other feedstocks that are available that don't compete with food production and generate jobs in his economy and reduce his dependence on importing oil, which is expensive.
Sounds like vaporware.
David, Willie, I hate to break up your love fest, but Marjan, I think, has a comment.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I'm member of IATA, so I really support, of course, Willie in this debate. And it shows how difficult it is for our sector, and we all agree on this. It shows how difficult it is for the industry, and it's a hard-to-abate industry to reach the targets. But from a European point of view, first, the focus now is on regulation, on taxation, instead of helping the industry to reach the targets and to help the industry to have the available supply. And at the same time, if we not show responsibility, then a lot of people don't take us seriously anymore. And of course, it's for our industry more difficult than for other industries, but at least we need to embrace the targets and show willingness to whatever it takes to reach the targets at feasible cost levels. And we are still not there, but we need to show it.
Right. And I think what is very clear is there are diversity of opinions. There's no single one right answer. There's no single one right solution. We're going to need multiple strategies, multiple approaches on what we need to do. It will vary potentially by airline or by country, by region, but we cannot do nothing.
No.
So on that, I want to thank everyone. We've gone a little over time. Thank you all for your patience.